Here we go. My name's Todd.
This is Cathy.
Welcome back to another episode of Zen Parenting Radio. This is podcast number 799, 9 times. Why listen to Zen Parenting Radio? Because you'll feel outstanding. And always remember our motto, which is that the best predictor of a child's well-being is a parent's self-understanding. I have a small idea of what we're going to do today, but Cathy has a better idea. So are you willing to kind of tease out where we're going to go today?
We're going to talk about 5 things to be optimistic about.
Mm-hmm. 5 things. Is anything else, or is that it?
Well, I mean, within the 5 things, there's a lot of sub-content.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, oh, here's 5 things done. It's like there's some things that can grow into other things. And I think that many right now need things that they can look forward to or be optimistic about. I know that for some there's heaviness right now, and I get it. And I in no way am trying to bypass any of that. I don't think we have to. I think we can do a number of things simultaneously. We can feel our feelings or our fear or deal with our challenges, and at the very same time be forward thinking in what we can do and what is happening. And what is happening already. Like, one thing that Todd and we did a podcast a couple weeks ago where we talked about all these quotes that I had around the house. And one of our favorites is about the rock garden. Mm-hmm. And I can't do it off the top of my head because it's like kind of a long quote, but it was about how when we're standing in a rock garden, and you're like raking the rocks, there's always rocks you can't see. They're underneath or they're behind you and so there's things happening that you may not be aware of. There's rocks that are present that you may not know are present.
I want to just, if you ever need any support, sweetie, this is the fixer in me.
Okay.
I have a wonderful thing that you should do. Are you ready?
Okay.
Oh no, it's not playing.
Yes.
I think I ought to lie down.
Oh.
Take a hot bath and then wrap a hot towel around your head.
Wrap a hot towel around my head.
And then make yourself some soup. Get a nap. Okay?
Okay.
Ferris's dad.
We all need Ferris's dad today.
What I think is interesting about Ferris's dad is I totally relate to that. Like, I feel like that's just when our daughters want nurturing. Now, I can put on my nurturing hat for sure. I can. But there is a Ferris dad in me for sure. Basically giving you ideas that don't help at all, but it makes me feel good that I'm trying to help.
Dad, Todd says that those 2 sentences that you just heard probably 4 times a week to our girls. If they call and say, like JC just texted this morning and said it's so cold because she goes to school in Michigan. She's like, we can't go outside. School is canceled. It's so cold. And he's like, wrap a hot towel around your head.
Wrap a hot towel around my head.
And then make yourself some soup.
Make yourself some soup.
Get a nap. Okay?
Get a nap.
It's actually pretty good advice, but the way he gives it is just
very passive.
Yeah, I just don't think it's landing.
Well, first of all, Ferris, sorry to spoil the plot, everybody, but Ferris is not sick.
And he has a day off.
Those are 2 things. He lives in Chicago.
Yeah.
His friend is named Cameron.
Yes.
His girlfriend is named Sloan. But other than that, he is not sick. And so dad is just trying to be like, hey, here's some things you can do, but he's not really helping.
When Cameron was in Egypt's land.
Let my Cameron go.
And real quick, before we really start the show, I'm the one that has to change your name in Zoom for some reason.
I don't like that.
And it's an understandable thing that drives you nuts when you don't have control over something, and I do. Mm-hmm. It's very kind of old school 1950s crap.
So there's a few things that Todd and I, because we're married and we are in a business together, there's a few things that we share. Like, for example, Zoom. But for a while it was my account. Mm-hmm. But then Todd had to mess with Zoom because he has a Med Living account. And so it all got messed with. And now it's you. Mm-hmm. And so when I sign in, sometimes I can't be the host. Yeah. You're the host. And I can't change my own name. Yeah. And I hate this. Yeah. This also happens because we have a Google Calendar. Yeah. So the Google Calendar runs through Todd's Google. Yeah. So that means I need to always be logged into Todd's Google. So whenever I pull up Google, it pulls up every spreadsheet Todd has ever done in his life. and which is annoying. And I have to be in his Google. So if people send me something or I get a link, it can't connect. I have to like get out, go to mine and connect.
I know that there's got to be a better way of the way we have Google and calendar set up.
I think there's
I just don't know how to do it.
There's probably an overlap, but you and I have been doing this for 14 years.
Yeah.
So like so much of our work is under your name.
Yeah.
And that wasn't intentional. We
Right.
didn't like make a decision. It just kind of all of a sudden Todd did this part or whatever. And then
It's
it was
whoever
under his
set it
name.
up first, really. Like the
Correct.
Zoom, you set up. So it was under
Right.
your account. And then I think it actually started with Team Zen. By the way, Team Zen, I want to just say hi to our newest Team Zen member, Raquel from Tennessee.
Hi, Raquel.
So glad that you joined us.
Thank you. It's so good to have you here. And then the other thing is like credit cards, which like Todd told me last week, he's like, we're getting new credit cards. I don't know why. They just sent us a letter and said we are. So this weekend, while you were gone, I was so nervous
That it was going to go away.
that it was going to go
Yeah.
away. And I'm like, why don't I have control of my own things? Now, I understand that some of this is just part of being in partnership and sharing it. And I'm not like a control freak where I want to be in charge of all these things. It just sometimes has this vibe to me, like I have to wait for Todd to do
You got to get
something
permission from your husband, sweetie.
that I as an adult can do. And so, you know, so for those of you out there saying to yourself, well, just do this or just do this. I know I'm not stuck in a situation that's really that detrimental. Todd, are you coughing into the,
Wrong pipe.
yeah, at least it's not a smoothie. Then I'd be annoyed, but
Yeah.
it was just water. So anyway, I'm not mad at you though. You know that, right?
I do.
I'm not annoyed at you. I'm annoyed about the system.
The setup.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, as my voice is adjusting to having water down the wrong pipe, just give me just a few minutes at some point in the podcast about a reflection from my Men Living Advance this weekend.
Okay.
That's all.
Men Living Advance, people don't know what that means. So Todd went on a
It's a
Men Living
weekend. It's a weekend men's retreat.
Yeah.
Even though we call it an advance for different reasons.
Yeah, and that people don't know that.
No.
So, okay. And so speaking of, I know we're going to talk about it more, but this weekend coming up is our Zen Parenting Conference. It's our last one, ZenCon 25, everybody.
Yeah.
I know people tend to jump on board right at the very end. I suggest you do that.
Yeah.
I suggest you jump in and come to this conference. So if you are one of those people who are feeling heavy right now and you're like, I'm just not quite sure where to focus my energy, for goodness sake, come. Like, that's why we're doing this. I couldn't have predicted that it would be exactly around a time people needed it this much, but that's the whole intention, is that we're trying to create community and create an opportunity for people to shift the way they're seeing things. Because a lot of times, you know, the definition of a miracle is a shift in perspective, right? So let's come together, and it's so fun. Todd and I have so many fun things lined up. Plus Glenn Phillips.
Have I played this one?
Yes.
Oh, I have.
You play it all the time. Same one.
But you said that last week when I did
Good intentions.
Good Intentions,
Yes.
and then the ocean one. So
Oh, you know what? You're right. You haven't played this one.
Yeah, thank you.
You played.
yeah, I'm trying to mix it up.
You're right. I am incorrect. I love this song.
Are you going to ask Glenn to play certain songs?
Yeah.
What
I mean,
if
if
he
he-
pulls a Natalie Merchant?
He kind of did in Michigan.
Yeah.
He's a talented musician. I'm not going to micromanage what he sings.
People don't know what that what that means.
Oh, the Natalie Merchant.
One of my friends said
no.
that he hated a concert because
It's my best friend's husband, who I'm very close
no,
to.
no. I'm talking about how the story happened as a result of I was at Mike Rosen's
Oh,
house.
sorry.
And they went to a Natalie Merchant concert, and she played none of her popular songs.
Right.
And they were pissed. So then Cathy got into a big debate with Chris Lozier. And
Where he was like, she has every right to do that. And I said, but if you sell tickets saying Natalie Merchant is coming to town, people are buying those tickets because they're expecting to see a few songs. Now, as somebody who goes to live shows all the time, I don't think to myself, you better play every song I know, but I'd like a
throw
few
me a
thrown in
few
there.
bones.
And Chris was very, very adamant that he didn't think that was necessary.
The good news is the debate continues on.
It does.
10 years later.
We're not done.
We're not done. By the way, sweetie, I'm on your side.
You are? Thank you.
so you know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So if you want to come to the conference, the ZenCon 25, please check it out. The link is in the show notes. And if money is an issue, email me and we'll figure something out.
Yeah, we can do. We have coupon codes. We have scholarship. We have this year.
Yeah.
So if you want to come, do not miss it
Yeah.
because of money.
And it's our
so
last.
silly.
And it's our last one.
Yes, email us and we'll. There's a bunch of people who have emailed us and it's been this quick. We've
Yeah.
turned it around.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you need to worry about. And especially if you're a therapist or a teacher, we've got coupon codes up the wazoo.
Yeah.
Okay. So you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
So 5 things to be optimistic about. I wanted to be I didn't want this to be generic at all. So I'm coming up with things. I did a search for things that made me feel optimistic.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with one of them that kind of feels like it may not fit in this category, but I'm putting it in.
Okay.
Shannon Watts is somebody I follow very closely, as you know. She started following our page, and I could not have been more excited.
Yeah.
Like, Shannon Watts is the woman who created Moms Demand Action. And she is just, to me, a role model of when something happens, taking a leadership role. And she has, as far as common sense gun laws and making people more aware and et cetera. So one of the things she talks about, and she just did a podcast about this again, so I got reminded, is about the optimism of losing forward. Okay?
The optimism
Of losing forward. So let's talk about that.
That's strange.
What we need to do is celebrate every win we have. Small, tiny, possible, and any win, because it's easier to stay in a fight or stay in something we're trying to change when we see our progress. Okay? Because I feel like a lot of people have these big goals. This can be macro or micro. When it comes to our country, people have all these big goals. This big thing needs to change.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't for some reason, or things start to go awry, which they have, we're like, well, then it's over. And what are the little things that have happened so we can see the forward progress, And you can't give up when you lose because it's inevitable. People okay, my daughter is in speech and she's very good at speech. She's good at it. But occasionally she doesn't get the place she wants, or she doesn't get exactly what she thought she was going to get. And, Todd and my conversation with her is always about, this is inevitable.
Right.
It's not all, even though speech is a very individual effort, you don't know who the judges are. You don't know what the mood of people is. You don't know the other kids who are there.
Could have a bad day, could have a good day.
Correct. It's inevitable when you are good at something, or even when you're figuring out how to be good at something, you have to learn how to lose.
Yeah.
There is no way to become excellent. And I try and throw all the sports stuff at her. It doesn't mean anything. The whole Michael Jordan missed, how many shots to make sure he was the best player. And Babe Ruth struck out
More times than anybody.
more times than anyone, but was the biggest home run hitter.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be good at something unless you lose. So you have to consider that you're learning something that will help you win next time. And that's what losing forward means. Okay. So the last part that's big about losing forward is you've got to prepare for a long game. Now, we can look at this again, macro or micro. We can look at our country. We can look at our community. We can look at our own family. Most of the things that we take for granted, they took a long time to come to fruition. Like, I've been really reflecting on who I was as I was raising the girls, and the kind of mindfulness that I wanted, and the kind of gratitude that I was trying to create on days that were just so busy and so overwhelming. And when I felt really like my world was only being a mom, even though I did have a job and I was a partner with you and I had other things going on, I was like, I couldn't do anything but be with them. And a lot of now that my girls are older, a lot of the work I did as far as self-awareness and mindfulness and yoga and gratitude journaling, I now still do that. And now it's come to a place where I'm like, now I embody it. And again, my girls are older. So also what shifted was I'm not doing exactly the same thing. But if I hadn't done those things then, I wouldn't have the awarenesses that I do now.
Yeah.
Everything, like one of Todd and my favorite things that we heard this story from Wayne Dyer, I think, but somebody called in or wrote to him and said, I'm considering starting a graduate program, but I feel too old because I'm like 58 years old. It might've been 48. I'm 48 years old and I just don't know if I should do this. And all he said was, in 2 years, when you're 50, you're either going to have a graduate degree or you're not. So which one do you want?
Yeah.
Like, you need to do work now to have something later.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work like this. And I'm not trying to be flippant, because I think we have also, I'm just going to be honest, I think we've lost a lot. I think
Sure.
a lot of things have gone not great in our country, maybe in our communities, where things are starting to get a little scary or a little like worrisome. I get that. It's not that I don't see that, but what do we do when we think that in our own families? Maybe communication is breaking down. Maybe our relationships are breaking down. In 2 years, do we want to be like we did nothing?
So what I hear you saying is like sometimes you have to focus on the long game.
The long game.
So it reminded me of this quote. Kathy and I are recording on January 20th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this is one of his more famous ones. It's just 10 seconds, but I think it's worth sharing.
Let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Let us realize that William Cullen Bryant.
I heard that from Brian Stevenson when we heard him speak at Edmonton.
remember.
I didn't know that was a Martin Luther King Jr. quote until Brian Stevenson said it. But anyways, yeah, it's like the long game. It's like, well, we got to eliminate, climate change right now. Like, well, it's the only way most things change is baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward.
And when people give us these numbers and they're like, if we don't do this by this day or by this year, everything's going to go to hell and everything's going to fall apart. I hear that. I believe in science. It's not that I'm questioning that. But I also think there's a lot of rocks we haven't seen. There's a lot of things we don't know. There's a lot, whenever the girls get really worked up about these things, which Gen Z does, I'm like, our creativity is also here. Like, something could be created. It could be created through something like AI that we're like kind of demonizing, but all of a sudden it gives us this information that we need to save the planet. Like, I'm not being Pollyanna. I see the challenge, but I'm also like, what do we do then? And I would much rather direct my energy toward preparing for a long game.
Right.
And like, Todd, listen to this. It took 100 years to win the right for all women to vote. 100 years. It took 100 years to pass child labor laws in all 50 states. It took 40 years to legalize same-sex marriage after the first state lawsuit was filed. It took 20 years to implement drunk driving standards in all 50 states. Like, things, it also, things get rolled back, like Roe versus Wade. Terrified me. One of the worst days I've ever had. I see the back and forth, but then and by the way, Cecil Richards died today as well, who was the president of Planned Parenthood, who did so much work and had a great book called Good Trouble and pushing us forward. And she's the daughter of Ann Richards, and Ann Richards was the governor of Texas.
Oh, wow.
And so these are 2 women who also in my lifetime I have looked to as leaders, and we can say, well, she died and then that's it. But no, look at what these women did. They pushed us forward in so many ways.
I have one example, and I might play a little clip from CBS Sunday Morning that was from December. But one thing that they said on that show was that in 2024, 20,000 less people died of drug overdoses, which is a 17% decline. So obviously, any single overdose is too many, but we are trending in the right direction.
Correct. And that's a long game thing too. Like, Todd, do you remember, I mean, I'm going way back 80s, 90s, but the crack epidemic?
Sure.
And since then we've had the opioid epidemic. There's been others. So it's not, again, no denial of the reality. But now everybody knows what Narcan is. Is that what it's called? Narcan?
God, I should know this because I've been participating in these webinars in the construction industry. I'll Google it, but yeah, there are some medications that should be in workplaces and maybe even homes where there's potential for opioid overdoses, and it's this like nasal inhaler.
Oh, it's an inhaler.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that helps them not die. And it's super effective.
Right.
You just need it available in that moment.
Correct.
And one of the things I'm trying to do in my other world, which is called JVI in the construction industry, is get our employers to have this stuff in job sites, at the plants, because, you just don't know when it's going to happen.
Well, let's make the connection there. A lot of people in job sites in the plants have physical injuries. And so they're going to be more likely to have had taken opioids, which then they're more likely to have been addicted. And so not by their own fault, but because it's an addictive drug, and sometimes they're given it by doctors who don't have the whole story, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a likelihood there that they may need something, and to make sure that just like the defibrillators that came along.
Yeah.
Remember when those were put everywhere?
Yeah.
I know, my dad had 2 heart attacks in his life. So those are the kind of things those things didn't exist when my dad was having heart attacks.
The 2 words are naloxone, but the brand is called Narcan.
Okay, Narcan.
Narcan.
I was saying Narcan, though,
Yeah.
so it's Narcan. Yes. And
Yeah.
so these are just things like, I think sometimes when we're focused too much on the big picture or one thing, we forget that there's all sorts of things happening underneath that are like helping people and helping people live longer. And it's, again, we can do many things at once. Things can be very paradoxical. We can be very worried about one aspect of life and be very optimistic about another. And the one that we're optimistic about gives us the energy to tackle the things that challenge us.
Oh.
So don't believe that you have to be, wallowing all the time. There's things that can help us be active. So you ready for number 2?
Number 2.
It's a little less heady. It's a little more chill. It's about entertainment. Okay. So one thing I want to say is that so we all know that basically the only movies in the theaters are Marvel movies, right? Todd and I love to go to movies, and we then sometimes will be like, we have a date, so let's go to a movie, and we don't know any of the movies that are in the theater.
And they're probably not very good.
And even the ones that are there, we're like, I've never even heard of this. Now, the season we just came out of, or that we're in right now, a lot of the award movies are in the theater. And then in the summer, you have a blockbuster or 2. But just on your average, like March 4th, it's hard to find a movie. So, but with that said, because things are digital platforms and technology has made it easier and cheaper to share movies, that means that independent filmmakers are more capable of reaching their audiences, right? And we can, the big production companies may not give money to something that is something like Pulp Fiction. I mean, like, there may not have been someone who supported Pulp Fiction or Quentin Tarantino. If he came along right now, they may say like, oh no, that's too, we don't understand it, or no one's seen it, so we're not going to do it. But now we have all these independent filmmakers and production companies that are like, we will finance this because we can do it for cheaper. We can get it to audiences faster. And what does that mean? That means that independent filmmakers are getting their vision seen by people. So people's lives that we don't know about, people's experiences that we've never seen before all over the globe, we're getting to see. And these are the things that entertainment wakes people up to people's experiences.
Yeah, don't underestimate the impact of it, right?
Yeah, like that whole Will and Grace thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Malcolm Gladwell did
yeah, that was good.
It was in his book, but he also talked about it on his podcast, that really one of the biggest shifts, I'm summarizing this very briefly, but in our culture, as far as same-sex marriage, was the fact that so many people were watching Will and Grace. And so people had a different perspective on what, relationships looked like when it came to gay men.
Yeah.
And it like changed the way people thought.
Yeah.
And so now, are we reaching a mass audience like Will and Grace did? Maybe not, but there's been some really interesting movies that are up for Best Picture this year that, they're made by people who maybe wouldn't have been in the industry otherwise.
Yeah.
So anyway, but now, Todd, let's talk about our TV shows.
Okay.
You ready?
What do you want me to do?
Well, let me say this first. 2025, everybody, some of our favorite shows are coming back. So Todd, play something so we can.
All right. So see if you know what show this is the theme from. I'm just going to let it play, but why don't we?
In the background?
Yeah. Why don't you just?
Doesn't it give you the vibe of the show so much?
Yeah. Yes.
It's great.
Yeah.
And this is from
Severance. Great.
So we loved Severance season 1. And actually, season 2 came out this weekend, but Todd was gone and I was watching football games. So I haven't watched it, but maybe tonight. But then there's a Notre Dame game tonight too. But anyway,
Don't say that the Ohio State fans.
Ohio State, sorry. Sorry, everybody. I'm only saying Notre Dame because I live closer to where Notre Dame is.
Yes.
Is that good enough?
Yeah, it's fine. Who cares?
Okay. So Severance. So for those of you who have never watched Severance, highly recommend. What would you say about it?
What I would say about Severance is that I'm too lazy to rewatch it. I remember being like, it's kind of good, but the finale was ridiculous.
Ridiculous. It was so good.
Like it was by far for me the best episode of the series.
Yeah.
But it was really good. I think other people in my family like it better than I do.
Yeah, we love it. Yeah. So okay, so that one. So what's the next show we watch?
Let's do this one. This is a hard one. I never would have gotten this one.
But as it gets going, yeah, because people will know this part, don't you think?
I don't know if it's, I mean, I know a lot of people watch this show. So this is a returning series or mini series. I don't know what to call these.
It's like a returning show, I think we can say.
I never would have gotten this one though.
What is it?
This is White Lotus. White Lotus.
Yeah. And White Lotus is also one of our favorites. And this year they're in
I have no idea.
Thailand, I think.
Could be.
So they're always in a different location, but it always has a similar vibe. And it's about relationships and about, well, I don't know what it's about this season. I got to be honest with you, but I know it's coming back. And I just like getting excited about a show. Like if Todd and I are watching something, and especially something like Severance that only drops every Sunday, that we have it, or Saturday. I don't remember when it dropped this weekend, but that we're like, we can watch this. Yeah. Because it makes the day so much more fun.
I totally agree. And it's funny, sometimes I like looking forward to a show and reflecting back on the show as much as I do watching the show.
I know.
And I don't know if that's like, okay, Ty, time to get present. Like this thing that you look forward to and reflect back on, like the experience itself should probably be the best thing. But anyways, I don't know.
No, one of my teachers in high school told me that really what life is nostalgia and goals, like what you want. And again, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that because I really do believe with mindfulness and being present, but that's what our brain runs on. Yeah. Right. We love nostalgia and we love being like, what's coming next. So I don't think you're different than most people.
You ready for the next one?
Yes. Totally picks up the vibe of this show.
It was cool, nothing fire, nothing good. Simple, nothing tired, nothing cold.
And the name of this show is Yellow Jackets.
This is one of my all-time favorites.
It's a very good show.
And I have no idea where they're going this season either. I'm trying to not read. I've historically been a reader about movies and shows, and then I know too much because now like trailers and everything give everything away.
Yeah.
But we love Yellow Jackets. This is season 3. The only thing I do know is that Juliette Lewis.
Juliette Lewis is an amazing actress.
Is an amazing actress who may not be in the show this year. But anyway, that's the only thing that I know for sure. But the only reason I stopped myself is maybe someone hasn't watched any Yellow Jackets yet. So, but other than that,
you ready for the granddaddy of them all?
This is the granddaddy. Yeah.
This also captures the vibe of the show.
Oats.
And I still haven't seen all of season 1 yet.
Oh, Todd, how is that possible?
I don't know. And for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 5 or 6 years, the name of the show is called, go ahead, sweetie.
Stranger Things.
And the best person on that show is obviously Dustin.
Well, that's, I love Dustin, but there's a lot of great characters. I love Steve. So
let me ask you this.
Yes.
Amongst those four shows, which are you most excited for? And then which do you think might be the most likely to be of a disappointment?
Ooh, gosh. Okay, so I'm most excited about Stranger Things just because it feeds me the most. I'd say Yellow Jackets is second.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. Disappointment? I don't want to think about it that way.
I'm going to say White Lotus because I loved season 1. Season 2 was good, and they're trending downward for me.
Oh, really?
So
maybe it'll trend back up.
Yeah, who knows? So anyways, those are our 4 exciting shows that we are going to be watching sometime in 2025.
So look forward to your shows. Maybe there's shows, obviously, that we didn't mention. There's plenty of things. But, make that something that you enjoy. Because the reason I enjoy those 4 shows is they are a study of people and connection and disconnection. And there's a theme that runs through all of those shows for me.
Yeah.
It's not just, I can't stand, I know everybody I don't even want to say the shows that people tell me to watch because I don't want to put them down, but there's certain shows people are like, you got to watch this. And I'm like, there's not the thread that I'm looking for.
Well, and I'll just say that, a lot of times parents are like, I just can't connect with my kid. And one of the ways that we connect with our kids is
Through
we
shows.
watch these shows together.
Yeah.
We talk about these shows if they happen. Some of our kids are in college, but it's still a vehicle of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, okay, ready for number 3, Todd?
Number
We'll
3.
go a little faster. Number 3 is, I just want to, again, we're doing 5 reasons to be optimistic. And number 3 is about menopause and women's health. And the reason I'm going to say I'm optimistic is because now there's such an understanding, talking about menopause, where we still have a lot of research and a lot of things we need to do to support women. I don't know if it's trickled down to doctors' offices yet, where, they have a better understanding, general practitioners, of what women need when they're premenopausal or, perimenopausal or menopausal. But just the conversations around it have changed so much, and we're going in the right direction. Like, there has been something that I didn't even know until the last couple of years is the lack of research when it comes to women and their health, that men historically have been researched when it comes to pharmaceuticals and when it new inventions in, healthcare, and women haven't even been considered. Mm-hmm. And so now there's a little more focus on women's needs. And again, it's a long game. Yeah. We got a lot of catching up to do, but at least we're talking about it. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to keep going in that direction.
Sure.
Todd, do you know, just to give people an idea of how this has affected women, did you know that when it came to Ambien, they did all so Ambien is a sleep medication. They did all the research on men. Mm-hmm. Okay. Come to find out that women, their dosage needs to be cut in half. Mm. And for years, women were taking the same dosage as men. And when they'd wake up in the morning, they would still be drugged. And it was leading to a bunch of car accidents that women were having, even though they were taking the medication as prescribed to them. Mm-hmm. And all of this this led to more research around Ambien in women, which then led us to, because of the way their body is, they don't need as much. Isn't that ridiculous? That roundabout way?
Well, and I'm sure the scientists adjusted for, how big a person is, because guys sometimes are a little bit bigger, but it sounds like what you're saying is just the constitution of a woman's body deals with Ambien differently.
It says research has shown that women metabolize Ambien differently and much more slowly than men. Yeah. And so the difference can lead to higher blood levels of the drug for a longer period of time after taking the same dose. Yeah. So that is just an example of many, many examples where women are just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We're just trusting, okay, this is what we all take, but the research wasn't done on us. Yeah. So while that frustrates me and makes me angry, my optimism is there's a spotlight on all of this now.
Let's look at it and let's get it better. And, I'm not justifying this, but I think the reason that these scientists or researchers test men is because the woman's cycle. So can we not figure out how to test women, even though the woman has a cycle? It's ridiculous.
It simplifies it for researchers who they're like, if we just test men, then we don't have to. But
we're going to forget about the other half of the population.
Correct. It's insane. Yeah. But that's the thing, is if there's no spotlight on it, then no one's questioning it, and they can do their research and say, hey, we got a new pharmaceutical, and it, So anyway, so that's number 3. I'm optimistic about that. Number 4, the focus now on emotional intelligence when it comes to how we raise our kids. Todd and I have been doing this podcast for about 14 years, and some of you have been listening the whole time. Thank you. But for those of you that are newer, we were talking about things like mindfulness and self-awareness and emotional intelligence 14 years ago. And it was kind of when I say cutting edge, I don't mean we came up with it. I just mean people pushed back on it a lot.
Sure.
We had a lot of questioning and where's the research with that? For example, I have been teaching at a university for 14 years. And when I first started talking to my students about mindfulness and emotional awareness and all of these things, I didn't have a lot of research. So I had to just really say, trust me. And doesn't this feel better? I used to say that all the time. And I'm not saying I wasn't offering theory that was being presented by other, scientists and researchers, but there wasn't a lot of research. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
And now we just have so much data, and parents have such a better understanding of their own emotional intelligence or emotional awareness, regulation, and what they're passing on to their kids. And that's going to make a really big difference in how we relate to each other.
No doubt.
I think we need to see the long game in emotional awareness, talking about trauma. This is big.
Yeah. And I feel that no matter how fast technology advances because of AI, I don't care how smart a computer is in helping somebody through a challenge. I think we're wired to have human connection. So my hope is that there's all these jobs that will pop up because computers are not equipped to do what us human beings can do when it comes to human interaction.
I 100% agree. I tell my social work students that all the time, that I'm like, obviously there's some aspects of social work that, data and that kind of thing that can be taken by AI. But if they are becoming therapists, or they're working with human beings, or they're working in organizations or activism, they will always have jobs. Like there are some things that necessitate human interaction.
Even though there's that robot, and I think in Empire Strikes Back, that put Luke's hand back on. Maybe that robot was better than human beings.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
Not.
Remember the female robot that helped Padme deliver Luke and Leia?
Luke.
She was
Leia.
Yeah.
I always make fun of that.
I know, but George Lucas or whoever had kind of a nurturing looking robot droid. And she had that soft voice.
Sure.
So anyways.
Well, that's the thing, is like, those are things that, and again, those are fictional stories, by the way, but those are things that, yes, we can have help with that. We just watched Interstellar, and that, robot, what was it called? It was such an interesting robot.
Yeah. And he had that normal voice.
Yeah. Of course, there are things coming where it's going to humanize, but there's the way we are created, the way human beings are created is we need connection from other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Even having the screens between us is not good enough. We need touch. We need conversation. We need that to thrive. Like, I hate that we have the research around failure to thrive, because it's gross the way we got this information. But we found that if you don't touch babies, they don't live.
Right.
And, we have that information, and that doesn't just mean babies. That means human beings. We need touch. We need compassion. We need support from people who are in front of us.
No doubt.
We're built for it.
Number 5.
So the last one is just about our ability to adapt and be resilient. I think, especially when it comes to things like leadership, for those of you who are not super optimistic about the leadership we're seeing in many places, I think we, as a society, are learning to adapt and be resilient faster.
Yeah.
And I don't mean adapt to poor leadership. I mean to find new ways to lead, to be creative in the way that we lead. Todd and I are, if you come to the conference this weekend on Friday night, we're doing, it's kind of a talk about how to lead in our homes, like how to connect in a certain way, how to adapt to what our children are going through, how to recognize how to communicate with the people in our home and in our community. Like, there are ways to be resilient in this area, and I think we're doing it faster.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with we have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it has to do with the way we can connect with people online, so we can, organize more quickly. And I also think we're understanding it's a necessity that, we need to be a little more grassroots and creative.
Speaking of adapt, sweetie,
Mm-hmm.
you wrote a book.
I did.
Called Restoring Our Girls.
did.
And in the section where you say a guide for real conversations, there's a section called Adapt.
Yep.
So one of the things that we need to do as parents
Mhm.
to help guide these real conversations is to be adaptable. I'm just going to read one paragraph. The different sections under the Adapt header is expectations, LGBTQ+, So anyways, I just want to read this one paragraph. You
Okay.
ready? It says, and this is under the C subset.
SEEC.
Yeah. In Zen Buddhism, it's taught that if we simply name something like a tree, we miss out on truly experiencing the tree. But if we observe a tree without the word tree, we find it fascinating and unique. Similarly, when we see our daughters beyond just their grades or extracurricular activities, we open ourselves up to experiencing them in a new light as intriguing, interesting people. This helps us see them as they are instead of who we expect them to be.
Yeah, so that's the micro level of like in our own home when we're looking at our kids and our expectation is they talk a certain way and do certain things and get certain grades. We are not seeing them. We are just living our expectations and forcing it on them. So that's, and to expand our awareness is we start to notice them as people, right? And we can say that in the macro level too for our communities, our school, our, leadership, our government is how do we do this different? How do we not get super focused on it has to work this way and this has to happen for things to go well and to be more creative in how we start to shift things. I know what's kept me at peace for the last couple months has been the understanding that it starts in our homes and you and I, this is our work. Yeah. And the more that we can help people, with their connection, with the people they care about, with their schools, with their, community relationships, with this more of a grassroots effort. Again, it's a long game, but I feel like we're pushing in the right direction.
Sure.
And that trying to do the same old things, if we don't adapt, then we're just going to hit walls. Yeah. Because it's a new time.
No doubt.
And I say that with optimism. I don't say that with, oh, it's a new time. I'm trying to, this is how I get my energy to keep going. So if I wallow in my disappointment or fear, I won't do anything. Yeah. And if I think about what's possible, then we do this podcast. We have virtual community in classes. We have a conference that we're doing on Friday. Like it helps me keep doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And hopefully shedding some light and sunshine in places that feel dark.
So a few other things to feel optimistic about. This is from the CBS Sunday Morning. They just kind of like rattle off a few quick things.
Great.
Let's see if it works.
That's all the time we have. We won't be able to mention the 24 states that raised their minimum wage this year, how the UK shut down its last coal plant, how you can now renew your passport online, the 800 school districts now using electric school buses for cleaner air and fewer child asthma cases, the first successful return from the dark side of the moon, how the hole in the ozone layer is healing faster than anyone expected, or the Postal Service's new mail trucks. They may have a little bit of a platypus vibe, but they finally offer airbags, air conditioning, side doors for unloading, anti-collision systems, and most of them will be electric. Have a joyous new year. And remember,
That's such an excellent way to end this, Todd.
Is it?
Yes. Like, you know why? Because first of all, those are all things that are true.
Yeah.
And the ozone layer, for being a Gen Xer, that was what terrified us. It was like one of the first things. Do you remember hearing
Sure,
about the
of course.
ozone layer?
Yeah.
Because that's when people started wearing sunscreen. Like we used to put on, baby oil and not worry about what
Yeah.
the sun did to us.
Did you ever do that?
Of course.
Ugh.
Like I used to get so tan, Todd. Like there's a reason why I go to the dermatologist every year
Yeah.
because what I've done to my skin
Yeah.
over the years.
That's one thing I think our daughters know better now.
Yeah, totally different.
Like they're smarter about that than we were.
I think I stopped doing it in my 20s. Like it's been
When
years.
you get like burnt?
Yes.
So you put on oil to get burnt.
Yeah, but
Because I know what happens after you get that like golden
Yeah.
bronze stuff, but I just think that's weird.
well, and again, this is different for different people. I don't really burn that easily. Like my skin tone is kind of yellow,
Mhm.
and so and I mean that in a good way. Like it gets tan.
Yeah, somebody who has very little pigmentation, they get, we all have friends that are from Irish descent and they're like putting block on like crazy.
Totally,
Yeah.
or they have red hair.
Yeah,
They,
right.
and I'm many things, but I'm Italian and I'm a little darker.
Mhm.
And like looking at you and I right now, if people are watching YouTube, look at your skin compared to mine. You're so much more Nordic. You're so much more Norwegian.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, but let me go back to the ozone. that was what was terrifying, besides the fact of what it was doing to our skin and that we have to be thoughtful about skin cancer. It's closing.
Yeah.
And this is something that they were like, it's never gonna, and I don't know if that's because of the things we're doing on Earth. I don't know if that's something we've done. I don't have the answer.
Right.
But things change, and they change in a scary way sometimes.
Sure.
And we have to deal with consequences like, forest fire, like the fires in LA, which has been, so awful and scary. And even though there's many reasons for it, climate change is definitely one of them. And then we also have these creative impulses. Like I remember seeing, this was years ago, but this guy who made this machine, he could go into the oceans and just scoop up garbage. And I don't mean like just a little bit. I mean like vast amounts of garbage. And I was like, that doesn't mean we can throw garbage in the ocean. It just means people are figuring out ways to clean up what we've done.
Yeah. Advancement, technology, science. We don't know what it will reveal. Remember that part in Back to the Future, I think part 2, where Doc puts the garbage in, and that is what powers the DeLorean? Because in part 1, it's plutonium or something. In part 2, he throws garbage in there.
Totally. And, even though I don't even care that this has been politicized, things like vaccines, like that's saving people's lives. And they're happening so much faster.
Yeah.
And, keeping with science, like allowing people to live longer and not have such awful diseases. And
100 years ago, I think a lot of people in the 1920s were worried about polio.
Right.
And
that's,
we're worried about a lot of other things that we no longer worry about. So right now in 2025, we're probably worried about a lot of stuff. And 100 years from now, like, look at those people. Think about what they're worried about.
And our worry or our fears, if channeled in a way that can
be helpful,
is what makes the change.
That's right.
So it's our worry and our fear that we sit with it and say, what can I do? And I think that, for this podcast or the work that Todd and I do, what can we do? From afar, we can support families and remind them that they have what it takes, and remind them to connect with their kids, and remind them, like, it's a long game and it's small shifts, but it does, I just got an email 2 days ago about somebody who said that they've been listening forever, and their kid is now in college, and the kid loves coming home, and they have this great relationship, and it's because of what she did, in the past 10 years to nurture this relationship.
Pays dividends.
It makes a difference.
Sure it does.
And there's plenty of people everybody is doing work to make this world a better place. I mean, some people are trying to tear it down, but we have to have, dark and light, right?
That's right. So speaking of doing work to try to better the world, I just got home from a Men Living weekend, and we had 21 men who came together to laugh and to feel our feelings and to have fun and to cry and to connect with ourselves and each other and Mother Nature, and play floor hockey, which I did. Hockey. I'm still a little sore from that.
Yeah.
There was some wonderful pieces on self-compassion, which I think is such a foundational piece of personal growth. But anyways, the one quick story I wanted to share is this one that was led by my best friend, or one of my best friends, Frank Nago, male friend. Sweetie, you're my best friend. Don't you worry about that.
Thank you.
There's a lot of journaling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of downtime on this weekend. And I'm not that much of a fan of journaling and downtime as some others. But I did it because I was there and it was time to journal. So the Doodleful one is journaling with these prompts, blah, blah, blah. And then just like when I was about to close the book, I wasn't even answering the prompts, but I just wrote these words down. And it's going to be, I think, my mantra for 2025.
Let's hear it.
Originally, it was eliminate distractions and investigate priorities. But I have since modified it to reduce distractions because it's not possible to eliminate distractions. So I'm going to reduce distractions, and I'm going to investigate my priorities. And the reason that that's meaningful to me is I get distracted very easily, as it turns out. Not as easily as some other people in my life who I won't name, and I'm talking about a few buddies of mine. But I get distracted, and I really want, like you and I just came home from yoga, and we were talking, I want to fill up my water bottle.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of interrupted. I'm like, let me, before we walk out, I want to fill up the water bottle. And I came back to you exactly where we left off in the conversation.
Correct.
And I usually don't do that.
Right. Well, I feel like we had an argument about this like a week ago.
We did.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So my goal is to have less arguments with my sweetie. And one of the ways that happens is by reducing the distractions, maybe interrupting you less or whatever. But then the investigate priorities is really concise for me, because sometimes Skylar will come home from school and be talking to you, and I'll be like, well, I could either go talk to her or I can finish this email. And I just want to continue to like investigate how I'm prioritizing my time. Like last night, we have a very busy week ahead of us, right?
Yes, we
And
do.
I just got back from this Men Living weekend, and I got to go to Vegas for work. And the dutiful one in me says the responsible move is for us to go to bed early and me start checking things off my list. And instead, we watched TV and had some drinks.
Yes, we had so much fun.
On a Sunday night, which is really weird for you and I. But because there was no school on Monday morning. So anyways, and I don't even remember like consciously deciding that because I wrote these 4 words down in a journal. It's just like, hey, what if we just had like a fun date night, which we rarely ever do on a Sunday.
Right. We always save it for Friday.
We save it for Friday and Saturday. And I'm so glad we did that.
I know.
It was a great way to start
There
out the
was
week.
So much good football, and then we had good food.
We got
and
more
then we-
football tonight. Go Notre Dame.
And Todd sat with me in my chair.
I did.
I have this love seat that I always sit in, and it is for 2 people, but I tend to get it to myself because I like to
She does.
like move my legs in a certain
does.
way. But Todd sat with me. But yeah, I think that's excellent, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So we have some sponsors for the conference. In the next 5 or 6 weeks, I'm going to be talking about each one of them individually. But I just want to give a shout out to the companies and organizations that have sponsored ZenCon 25. Wicked Awesome Dads Counseling, thank you so much. FFC, which is where we play yoga, where we practice yoga.
That stands for
Fitness Formula Club, I think. Science Olympiad, our friend Jenny Kopak. Ameriprise, that's sweet David Serrano. Avid Company, can't forget about Jeremy Kraft, he's a bald-headed beauty. And Spiritual Playdate, my friend Edwina, and I See You Mama, our friend Kara. They're all sponsoring the ZenCon 25. So I'm going to give them all individual shout outs in the upcoming weeks, but I thought it would be kind of nice to just hear them.
Again, a group of people there who are all doing wonderful things in very different areas.
Yes.
Health and fitness, finance, connection, family,
Yep.
everybody. I can't think of a better time to say, if there's something you want to contribute to this world, I don't care if you're, in college listening to this, go in that direction. Or if you're our age, I'm 53, keep going in that direction or shift to what you love.
Boom.
And, we need you.
We need you. We'll do a recap of the ZenCon 25 next Tuesday, but hopefully you join us Friday, Saturday night.
Can't wait to see you.
Keep trucking.